And Superman issue number 180 is written by Jeph Loeb and Geoff Johns, with pencils by Ian Churchill, inks by Norm Rapmund, colors by Tanya and Richie Hori, and letters by Comicraft. And this book begins with a man by the name of Count Romanoff welcoming Clark Kent, Lois Lane, and Jimmy Olsen into his castle, which is in Middle Eastern Europe. And within these first few pages, Lois's caption boxes pretty much lay out the entire premise of the story. Because from their present location, not too far off, is an area that is inhabited by General Zod. And it seems he wants to wage war, around Count Romanoff's area. So Count Romanoff invited Lois Lane and company along to do this really big story because he wants the world to know about it, especially Superman. As they begin settling in, Jimmy meets a woman by the name of Elizabeth, while Lois is entranced by both their host as well as the bed. And it's also in this moment that she mentions that, hey, Count Romanoff has a really cool cape, even though she kind of made fun of it at first, and Clark even points that out, but she's like, nah, I mean, it's a cool cape. He kind of pulls it off, and, Clark is just left there, like, solemn, almost kind of, like, pissed off to a degree, because he's like, it's like, I wear a cape, you never say anything nice about that. And just when everything seemed all well and good, it's during that first night that Lois awakens, walks out the window, riding a cloud, down to the ground, where she then encounters and is attacked by werewolves. And this is a very interesting scene because right as Lois wakes up and stuff, her entire color palette changes to this very monochrome style. And this is something that actually pops up a couple times in the book, where the story kind of takes on this sort of black and white horror movie aesthetic, which all of these monotone colors are then juxtaposed with the color red. Which, given context to the fact that this is a vampire story, of course, the color red is used as probably symbolism for, blood and stuff. But hey, we got werewolves. Suddenly, Superman swoops in and does battle with the werewolves, who manage to pin him down, while Lois is now in the presence of Count Romanoff. However, Superman is done with the werewolves and rescues Lois once more, and as he heads back toward the castle, she has a moment of erratic behavior before passing out. It's during the next morning that Clark tells Lois what happened, but she brushes it off as him having a bad dream. And this is a very interesting point in the book, because now Superman has done battle with werewolves. He watched Lois jump out the window, ride down on a cloud. He saw his host in front of her and just kind of turned into a wisp of fog, and he's thinking to himself, okay, so I can either A, get Jimmy and Lois back to Metropolis ASAP as Superman, or B, I can just kind of keep everybody in the castle knowing that there's danger present because I want to know more about what's going on. And interestingly, he goes with that second one, even though he could just fly Lois and Jimmy all the way back to Metropolis, come back to Count Romanoff's castle, and just be all like, alright bro, like, you got my attention, what's the deal? But of course, Lois, being as spirited as she is, she probably wouldn't willingly go back to Metropolis on her own accord, in which case, he could just at least take Jimmy back real quick, or stick Jimmy on the next flight out. It's then the book cuts to the interview with Lois and Romanoff as Clark looks at the wine bottles. Romanoff then decides they will finish the interview at nightfall. The gang then splits, with Jimmy back in his room, where Elizabeth walks in, throwing Jimmy off because she has no reflection, and with his back turned, she reveals her fangs. Gasp! She was a vampire! Who could have predicted this? With the big, wide castle and their pale skin and red eyes. And the fact she has no reflection. Meanwhile, Lois and Clark are getting dressed when Clark uses his X-ray vision to get a closer look at the wine and tells Lois that it's not wine at all, but blood. Lois, having been under the influence of Romanoff, once again brushes it off and heads into the dining room, where a single drop of blood lands on her hand. And when she looks up, she sees Count Romanoff leaping toward her, proclaiming his name is actually Count Dracula, whom of which has such magnificent power that he's able to turn Lois's dress from blue to red. The Fiend. But of course, Superman comes crashing through a window and now faces down the Lord of Vampires, as it turns out that this was Dracula's plan all along, as he uses his powers to entrance Superman and says he is soon to have a super-powered vampire in his battle against General Zod. However, something goes terribly wrong, and Dracula erupts into flames, hissing and screaming until he is nothing but charred bone. And this was a rather interesting part of the story, as Lois, once again within her caption boxes, explains that Superman is essentially a giant walking solar battery, because we know that his powers all come from the sun. So when Dracula bit into Superman, this was essentially the same thing as taking a Tic Tac that came from the sun and sticking it in his mouth. 'Twas both refreshing and cleansed his soul by burning him alive. Or unalive, because vampires are technically undead. They're not the living dead like zombies, but, you know, they're still not of the living. And now, with Dracula dead, his mind power fades as Jimmy comes barreling in, talking about how Elizabeth is a monster and is chasing him. Clark, who put his suit back on, and Lois kind of just laugh off Jimmy's claims as they hop on a flight back home, ending with the image of Elizabeth, a werewolf, Frankenstein, a mummy, and the creature from the Black Lagoon standing in a team pose for the audience, bringing this issue to a close. And that was Superman issue 180. I want a sequel, because when it comes to these whole superhero versus, Dracula type books, this actually was one of the more enjoyable ones, like the Spider-Man versus Dracula book, where, the two are kind of on the same boat, but they never actually meet face to face and don't actually do battle. Here there's at least some interaction. Though I am still a little sad that we didn't get to see like a dragged down, all out punching brawl between Superman and Dracula. But given with how the story ended up, we at least got to see him fight a werewolf. And it was interesting to see just how powerful Dracula's dark magic really is. Because even though Superman is really powerful, he does have two general weaknesses: kryptonite and magic, and Dracula has an abundance of magic. And his overall plan, at least for him, did make sense. It's like, all right, I need to get Superman here so I can turn him into a vampire so that he can help me fend off General Zod's inevitable attack. And so it's, I'll call the Daily Planet, get Lois down there, because wherever Lois goes, Superman goes. And from there, it's, that's the plan. It's just Dracula didn't do enough research into Superman to understand where exactly his powers come from and how they particularly work. And this lack of knowledge led to his death. But then I also think, what if he were successful in turning Superman into a vampire? And it's like, he'd have his super powered, vampire bodyguard or whatever for a little while. But after some time, Superman, being a vampire, wouldn't be able to go outside into the sun and recharge his powers. And over time, he would just, end up losing his powers. And speaking of the mind control, one added touch to this book I really liked is that when both Superman and Lois were under Dracula's influence, there were some interesting character tidbits here. Particularly elements that happened with the aftermath of the Worlds at War story. With Lois, it's blaming Superman for the death of her father because, with him, he had the choice to save General Lane or save Wonder Woman, and he picked Wonder Woman. And as Lois explains within her own dialogue, she kinda is mad at Superman for that. While on the other hand, Superman, aka Clark, he feels that Lois kind of abandoned him, especially with all that he endured during that event, and, she just kind of left him. His skin might be impenetrable, but his feelings can be hurt. As far as the art goes in this book, I kind of enjoy it. It's, it's early 2000s. Then going along with the colors, especially that first time that Lois, gets up out of bed under mind control, and she's just, in her shirts, mostly unbuttoned, and again, I just really like that overall horror movie aesthetic. I mean, the scene where they even walk into Dracula's castle for the first time really did remind me of, you know, the opening scene from Dracula. It's like, you got your people, they're introduced to the Count, even though they don't know he's Dracula yet, and his castle's just huge and amazing, but also clearly looks like the setting of a supernatural villain. And given the fact that we are in the DC universe and stuff like that, you know, the supernatural's been encountered before, you know, and you'd think, you know, maybe at least Superman would recognize some of the warning signs. When it comes to the criticisms, for me, they're very minimal on this book, as it's clear from, I mean, just the cover that this is supposed to be a spectacle over story. On one hand, I felt that maybe the pacing was a little too quick, and that the story may have benefited more from being 2 issues rather than 1, because it does feel condensed and packed in a way where it's like, I feel like there is information that I am missing, particularly with Jimmy, because even though he was here and present in the story, we spend so little time with what him and Elizabeth are doing that there are like quite a few, you know, panels and pages that pass where I kind of forget he's even there. Because there are things like, I'm wondering, you know, how Jimmy did get away from Elizabeth. I mean, the last we saw, she bared her fangs, she was gonna bite him, and then he's coming running down the stairs. And with her being a supernatural creature of the night, like extremely strong, I'm wondering, did he just find some way to get away from her? Did she decide that maybe she liked him a little bit and so she let him go? These are kind of minor, but I think they would have informed us a little bit more about at least Elizabeth's character. Also, I am kind of wondering why Clark and Lois lied to Jimmy about the whole vampire thing, where after he comes down the stairs and is like, yeah, Elizabeth is a monster, and they're all just kind of laughing off like, ha, Jimmy, yeah, you little scamp, let's get on the plane and go home. Because, you know, Jimmy's been around for a while, and he's seen his fair share of monster and alien attacks, so it's not like they're really protecting him at all. And then again, Clark's odd decision to stay with everybody instead of, you know, getting Jimmy and Lois out of there because werewolves and stuff. But at the end, I gotta admit, I read this issue with a big ol' smile on my face. The hamminess of it all and how overt Dracula was in his evilness provided me with a really fun reading experience and some laughs. And if you like those superhero versus famous horror monster creature type stories, then I think you'll get a kick out of this one. So Superman issue 180. What did you think about this book if you've read it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave your comments in the comment section below. And if you like this video, I'd love it if you'd smash that like button, share it with some friends, subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and ring that notification bell for more comic book content. And if you're wondering what to watch next, consider one of these 2 videos. Alright, take care, have a great day, and as always, stay geeky.